There is a peculiar, almost haunting truth embedded within the fabric of human aspiration and destiny, one that whispers of an undeniable solitude for those who are called to a higher purpose. It is a paradox that has puzzled philosophers, poets, and seekers across millennia. Why do those who seem most aligned with their truest potential, those we might even refer to as chosen or awakened, so often find themselves walking a path marked by profound, sometimes isolating loneliness? This is not the loneliness of the outcast or the failure, but a solitude that feels intrinsic, a silent companion to their very existence, a prerequisite for their unique journey. Consider the archetypal figures throughout history, the visionary leaders, the groundbreaking artists, the revolutionary thinkers. Many, if not all, traversed significant stretches of their lives in a state of deep personal isolation, misunderstood by their contemporaries, often estranged from conventional society and always irrevocably alone with their vision. Was this merely a coincidental byproduct of their genius, or something far more fundamental, an essential condition for their profound impact? Is there perhaps an unseen force, a psychological imperative that compels certain individuals away from the comforting embrace of the collective, onto a solitary road less traveled? We are not merely speaking of physical separation, but of a deeper existential estrangement. It is the gnawing realization that the values, priorities, and internal landscape of the individual have diverged so radically from the mainstream that true communion becomes a rare and precious commodity. This divergence is not chosen out of spite or arrogance, but rather feels like an organic, inevitable unfolding, a call from within that demands a fidelity to self above all else. What is the nature of this internal compass that guides a man towards such a demanding and often isolating journey? And what does it truly mean to be chosen in this context, when the very choice seems to necessitate a separation from the very world one might wish to influence? This deep-seated mystery, this silent imperative towards a solitary existence, forms the very core of Carl Jung's most profound insights into the human psyche. Jung, a man who himself knew the sting of intellectual and personal isolation for much of his life, offered a transformative lens through which to understand this phenomenon, moving beyond mere social observation to uncover its roots in the archetypal structure of the self. He posited that this walking alone is not a curse, but often a necessary, even sacred stage in the arduous process of psychological development. In this exploration, we will delve into the intricate layers of Jungian psychology to unravel the profound why behind this seemingly paradoxical solitude. We will ask, what precisely is the psychological process that compels certain individuals towards such a distinct and solitary path? How does the rigorous journey of individuation, as Jung termed it, inevitably leads to a sense of being set apart, of being misunderstood by the collective? And crucially, what is the transformative power inherent in this solitude, not just for the individual, but for the collective psyche of humanity itself? By examining these questions, we aim to offer not just answers, but a deeper understanding of your own unique journey, illuminating the unseen forces that shape your personal mythology and the often solitary landscape of your own becoming. This is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is an invitation to recognize the quiet heroism in your own path, and perhaps to embrace the profound power of walking alone. The assertion that a truly chosen man walks alone is not a lament, but an observation, born from the deepest currents of the human psyche, a phenomenon Carl Jung himself explored with profound meticulousness. It is not an arbitrary choice of reclusion, nor a consequence of social rejection in the conventional sense. Rather, it is an inevitable outcome of a transformative inner process, a relentless journey towards what Jung termed individuation. But what precisely compels this solitude, and what profound mechanisms are at play when an individual begins to hear the distant yet insistent call of their own inner wilderness? Our initial foray into this complex phenomenon begins with the Jungian concept of the persona. The persona is not merely a mask worn in public, it is the compromise we strike between our inner self and the demands of society, a necessary artifice that allows us to function within the collective. It is the role we play, the image we project, often carefully curated to garner acceptance, approval, or even power. For most individuals, the persona becomes so deeply ingrained that it is indistinguishable from their actual self, a comfortable social skin that rarely challenges the superficiality of interaction. The chosen man, however, embarks on a journey of profound self-reflection, a relentless inquiry into the authenticity of his own being. He begins to scrutinize the layers of his persona, questioning its origins, its purpose, and its cost. This is not a casual introspection. It is often catalyzed by a crisis, a moment of deep disillusionment with the external world, or an unbearable internal dissonance. He asks himself, who am I beneath the titles, the expectations, the roles I have been assigned or have adopted? This unmasking process is inherently isolating. As he peels back the layers of societal conditioning and collective expectations, he finds himself increasingly unable to participate in the shallow rituals and conventional conversations that sustain the social fabric. The small talk feels hollow, the pursuit of external validation seems futile, and the collective anxieties of status and acquisition appear trivial. He sees through the personas of others with an uncomfortable clarity, understanding that much of what passes for human connection is, in reality, a carefully choreographed dance of mutually reinforced illusions. This nascent authenticity becomes a barrier, a transparent wall separating him from the comforting, albeit superficial warmth of the crowd. He is no longer playing the game, and those still deeply engrossed in it find his sincerity unsettling, even threatening. His newfound integrity ironically makes him an outsider. Consider the very nature of consciousness itself. Jung observed that awakening to one's unconscious contents, to the vast hidden landscape of the psyche, is a process of expansion that inherently separates one from those who remain comfortably asleep. The chosen man is not chosen by external forces, but by an inner imperative, a psyche that demands confrontation with its own depths. This often manifests as an inexplicable restlessness, a persistent feeling that there is more to reality than meets the eye, a yearning for meaning that transcends the mundane. As he delves deeper, he begins to perceive the archetypal patterns operating beneath the surface of everyday life. He sees the shadow elements at play in collective behavior, the projections, the unconscious biases that drive political discourse, social trends, and personal relationships. He understands the profound influence of the collective unconscious, recognizing its universal symbols and myths in both historical narratives and contemporary events. This heightened awareness, while intellectually liberating, is emotionally burdensome. How does one converse casually about the weather when one is acutely aware of the existential angst bubbling beneath the surface of humanity, or the mythological dramas unfolding in the lives of those around them? This clarity of perception creates an intellectual and emotional chasm. When others are celebrating superficial victories, he sees the underlying fragility. When they are lamenting minor setbacks, he perceives the archetypal struggle for growth. His perspective becomes too vast, too encompassing, for the narrow confines of ordinary conversation. He cannot unsee what he has seen, cannot unknow what he has come to understand. This is the profound burden of expanded consciousness. It illuminates paths others cannot discern, but also renders him a lone traveler on those seldom trodden roads. Is it a gift or a curse? It is both, undeniably. Perhaps the most potent catalyst for the chosen man's isolation is his courageous confrontation with his own shadow. Jung defined the shadow as everything an individual refuses to acknowledge about themselves: the repressed instincts, the unadmitted weaknesses, the unexpressed desires, the primitive animalistic aspects of our nature. Society from childhood encourages us to suppress these undesirable traits, to project them onto others, and to maintain an idealized image of ourselves. The journey of individuation demands that we face this shadow. It is a terrifying descent into one's own darkness, a process of integrating those parts of ourselves we have disowned. This is not an intellectual exercise, it is an emotional and spiritual battle. It involves acknowledging one's capacity for cruelty, selfishness, envy, and all the imperfections that make us human. While others flee from this internal abyss, seeking distraction in external pursuits, the chosen man deliberately turns towards it, knowing that true wholeness cannot be achieved by fragmenting the self. This solitary engagement with the shadow is profoundly alienating because it shatters the conventional understanding of good and evil, right and wrong. Having faced his own internal demons, he develops a nuanced understanding of human nature, a compassion born not of naivete but of a deep acquaintance with his own flaws. He sees the shadow in others not as an external enemy, but as an unintegrated aspect of the human condition. This makes him difficult to categorize, for he does not easily condemn or idealize. He comprehends the complexities, the paradoxes, the light and dark inherent in every soul. This integrated perspective often makes him a figure of suspicion or misunderstanding. Those who refuse to confront their own shadows may project their unacknowledged darkness onto him, labeling him as strange, cynical, or even dangerous, precisely because he embodies a wholeness they fear. The very act of becoming psychologically integrated separates him from the fragmented collective. At the heart of Jung's psychology lies the concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a unified, whole, and unique individual. It is the quest to realize one's fullest potential, not by conforming to external ideals, but by integrating all the disparate parts of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, into a coherent whole, guided by the self. This is the ultimate goal, and it is by its very definition a solitary endeavor. Individuation is not about becoming a collective ideal, it is about becoming what one is. It means distinguishing oneself from the collective psyche, from the general patterns of thought and behavior, to discover one's unique destiny and purpose. This is a journey that cannot be walked hand in hand with the crowd. It requires an internal compass, a deep listening to the urges of the unconscious, and an unwavering commitment to one's own truth, even when that truth contradicts the prevailing consensus. Consider the metaphor of a mountain climber. While many may gather at the base and some might even embark on the initial ascent in groups, the highest peaks are always conquered alone. Each step is a personal struggle against the elements, against one's own limitations, against the sheer indifference of the mountain itself. The chosen man in his psychological ascent encounters trials and revelations that are profoundly personal, often inexpressible to others who have not undertaken a similar journey. His values shift. His priorities reorient themselves away from material acquisition and towards psychological integrity. His relationships become less about shared activities and more about shared depth, a rare commodity. This journey towards wholeness often necessitates periods of intense inner work, where external relationships may become secondary to the dialogue with the self. During these phases, the individual might withdraw, not out of misanthropy, but out of a necessity to metabolize new insights and integrate profound experiences. This creates a natural distance, a temporary yet vital separation from the demands and expectations of the outer world. The consequence: he may appear aloof, detached, or simply different to those who cannot comprehend the monumental inner architecture he is constructing. The phenomenon of the solitary, deeply insightful individual is not a modern aberration. It is an archetypal pattern embedded in the collective unconscious of humanity. Throughout history and mythology, we encounter figures who embody this chosen solitude: the prophet in the desert, the wise hermit on the mountain, the shaman entering altered states of consciousness alone, the philosopher contemplating universal truths in isolation. These figures, though physically alone, are profoundly connected to the depths of existence. The chosen man unconsciously taps into this archetype. He resonates with the need for withdrawal to gain perspective, to listen to the whispers of the soul that are drowned out by the noise of the world. He understands that true wisdom is often forged in the crucible of silence and introspection, far from the clamor of opinions and superficial interactions. Zarathustra descended from his mountain with insights for humanity. Moses communed with the divine in the wilderness. These stories are not just narratives, they are blueprints for a psychological path. This archetypal pull towards solitude is not a rejection of humanity, but a specific mode of engaging with it. The hermit does not hate people, He seeks a deeper truth that he can then, perhaps, bring back to them, albeit often in a form they are initially unwilling or unable to grasp. His isolation is therefore paradoxical. It is a necessary condition for cultivating a wisdom that ultimately serves the collective, albeit indirectly and often through generations. He walks alone to see further, to hear more clearly, to feel more profoundly the pulse of the cosmos. It is crucial to differentiate between being alone and being lonely. The chosen man, engaged in the profound process of individuation, may experience moments of profound loneliness, especially when he yearns for genuine understanding and struggles to find it. However, his chosen solitude is often a state of inner richness, where he finds companionship in his own thoughts, in the dialogue with his unconscious, and in the universal archetypal patterns he perceives. Yet his quest for deeper connection is precisely what often isolates him. He cannot abide by superficiality. When others speak of possessions, he contemplates purpose. When they discuss trivialities, he seeks meaning. This creates a misalignment in social interactions. He is not necessarily antisocial, but rather selectively social. He yearns for conversations that explore the human condition, the nature of reality, the depths of the psyche. Such conversations are rare. He finds himself in a peculiar position, capable of profound empathy due to his confrontation with his own shadow, yet unable to engage in the emotionally shallow exchanges that characterize much of modern social life. He may appear distant, not because he lacks feeling, but because his feelings are too deep, too complex for conventional expression. He seeks kindred spirits who resonate at this deeper frequency, individuals who have also begun their own journey into the psyche's underworld. Such individuals are few and far between, leading to extended periods of what appears to be outward isolation, but is in fact an inner pilgrimage of immense significance. This is the ultimate paradox. The deeper one goes within, the more universal truths one uncovers, yet the more unique and separate one becomes in their expression. In summary, the chosen man walks alone not out of malice or inability, but out of a profound and necessary journey. His solitude is a crucible, forging a consciousness that perceives beyond the ordinary, a self that has integrated its own shadow, and a being that strives for an authentic wholeness. This path, while arduous and often misunderstood by the many, is the very essence of psychological development, a testament to the courage required to answer the call of one's own deepest self. His isolation is not a lack, but a consequence of his abundance, a necessary condition for his unique contribution to the evolving human spirit. We have journeyed through the labyrinthine corridors of the human psyche, guided by the profound insights of Carl Jung, to confront a timeless and often unsettling truth: the inherent solitude of the chosen man. We have seen that this individual is not merely one who opts for isolation, but rather one who, consciously or unconsciously, answers an existential summons from the depths of their own being, a call to individuation. This path, by its very nature, demands a departure from the comfortable consensus of the collective, a disengagement from the gravitational pull of societal expectations, and an unwavering commitment to the arduous task of internal alchemy. The questions that initially provoked our inquiry, what defines this chosen man, and why is his path inevitably solitary, now crystallize into a clearer understanding, revealing the profound mechanisms at play. The chosen man in our Jungian exploration is irrevocably tasked with the integration of their shadow, that repository of disowned traits, unlived potentials, and primal instincts. This confrontation, a harrowing descent into one's own darkness, is a profoundly solitary act. No external authority can truly guide it. No collective ritual can fully absorb its shock. When the shadow is acknowledged, assimilated, and brought into conscious relation with the ego, the individual undergoes a transformation that renders them fundamentally distinct. Their values shift, their perceptions deepen, and their capacity for hypocrisy diminishes. They become less malleable to mass opinion, less swayed by superficial validations, and inevitably more an enigma to those who cling to their unexamined personas and collective identities. This internal restructuring is the primary why behind their growing divergence. Their acquired psychological wholeness makes them, in essence, speak a different psychological language, operate on different principles, and perceive a reality that is richer and more complex than the collective's simplified narratives. Furthermore, the journey involves the intricate dance with the anima or animus, the contrasexual archetype that holds the key to psychological completeness. To integrate these inner figures means to reconcile the seemingly contradictory forces within oneself, transcending rigid gender roles and societal stereotypes. This internal liberation, this embrace of one's full psychic spectrum, often positions the chosen man outside conventional frameworks of relationship and identity. Their understanding of love, power, and connection becomes nuanced, their emotional landscape richer, but also paradoxically more singular. Few are equipped to navigate such a complex inner terrain, and even fewer can truly comprehend the internal architecture that results. This mechanism of self-integration leads to a unique self-possession that often makes communal identification difficult, as their truths are no longer derivative but are forged in the crucible of personal experience. So is this solitude a curse, a tragic burden? Or is it, as Jung would suggest, a necessary crucible, the hallowed ground where the self, that transcendent organizing center of the psyche, can finally emerge? We've arrived at the unambiguous answer. It is profoundly the latter. The aloneness we speak of is not merely loneliness, though moments of profound isolation are an inevitable byproduct. Rather, it is the sacred space of inner work, the psychological wilderness where the ego must shed its illusions and forge a new, authentic relationship with the self. It is the silence required to hear the whispers of the unconscious, the detachment necessary to observe the projections of the collective, and the unwavering courage to stand firmly on one's own truth, even when that truth contradicts the world's loudest pronouncements. The mechanism here is a deliberate, albeit often unconscious, disengagement from external noise to facilitate internal listening and integration. This is the solitude born of authenticity, the separation that arises from profound self-knowledge. When one has stared into the abyss of their own unconscious, when they have integrated their disparate parts, when the ego has bowed to the authority of the self, the individual no longer seeks external validation as their primary sustenance. Their center of gravity shifts from the external collective to the internal core. They recognize that their deepest insights, their most profound transformations, are experiences that, by their very nature, cannot be fully shared or understood by those who have not undertaken a similar journey. This realization doesn't breed arrogance, but a quiet dignity, a profound self-reliance, and an often melancholic understanding of the inherent limitations of human connection at its most profound levels. The how of this aloneness lies in the individual's increasing self-sufficiency, rendering the typical collective demands for conformity and external mirroring obsolete for their inner growth. Jung's entire framework of individuation illuminates this phenomenon not as a flaw, but as the apex of psychological development. The self, as the ultimate guide, often pulls the individual away from the path of least resistance, away from the comfortable embrace of the herd, precisely because the journey to wholeness demands unique challenges and personal confrontations. The dissolution of the persona, that social mask, leaves one exposed, vulnerable, yet profoundly real. It is in this nakedness that the true individual emerges, no longer defined by the roles they play for others, but by the immutable essence of who they are becoming. This is the ultimate rejection of the collective consciousness's siren song, a conscious choice to embrace personal truth over manufactured comfort. The chosen man's aloneness is therefore not a failing of connection, but a triumph of consciousness, a testament to the profound courage it takes to become truly oneself. The profound consequence is a life lived in alignment with one's inner mandate, regardless of external consensus. The lesson is stark yet liberating. The path to genuine selfhood, to becoming a truly individuated being, is fundamentally a solitary one. It is a path walked by those who dare to descend into their own depths, to face their demons, and to integrate their disparate parts guided by an inner compass that often points away from the familiar. This is not to say that connection is lost, but rather that the nature of connection transforms. Relationships become deeper, more authentic, but also more rare, precisely because they are no longer built on superficial projections or collective agreement, but on the profound recognition of two whole autonomous individuals. The how of this transformed connection is through mutual individuation, a rare and precious bond. As the complexities of the modern world accelerate, as collective narratives become increasingly fragmented and often contradictory, the call to individuation will only grow stronger. More individuals will find themselves feeling this inexplicable pull away from the crowd, this yearning for an authenticity that cannot be found in external approval. The solitude of the chosen man, once an esoteric concept, may become an increasingly common experience, a necessary condition for navigating a world that often feels devoid of meaning. Understanding this Jungian truth offers not only solace, but also a map for those who feel themselves diverging, offering the wisdom that their aloneness is not an affliction, but a signpost toward their truest self. This is a prediction rooted in the timeless nature of the psyche's quest for wholeness amidst external chaos. The question then remains for each of us to ponder deeply. In a world that constantly beckons us towards conformity and external validation, are you willing to embrace the profound and often challenging solitude required to truly become yourself? The chosen man's path, as illuminated by Jung, is fundamentally a solitary ascent into the profound clarity of the authentic self. This solitude is not an absence, but a sacred crucible, a necessary isolation that sharpens one's unique vision and deepens comprehension of the archetypal forces at play within and around us. It is the inherent cost and the profound privilege of an awakened consciousness. We ask you, have you in your own unfolding journey encountered the resonant echo of this chosen solitude? Have you recognized the silent strength it demands, the distinct perspective it bestows? We urge you to share your deepest reflections, your insights, your personal experiences of navigating this less traveled path in the comments below. Your contributions are not mere entries. They are vital fragments of our collective human experience, offering profound mirrors for us all. If this exploration into the existential solitude of the individuated soul resonated with the deeper currents of your own being, if it offered a transformative glimpse into the profound why behind the chosen man's solitary walk, then please grant this video a like. Your thoughtful engagement is the very fuel that empowers our continued dives into the essential, often hidden truths of psychology. And if you discern someone in your life who is quietly forging their own unique journey, someone who might find profound solace or crucial understanding in these insights, we implore you to share this message. It could well be the very echo they seek in the vastness of their own inner landscape. Until our next profound descent into the intricate architecture of the human spirit, remain vigilant in your introspection and steadfast in your authentic path. For it is primarily within the sacred solitude of self-confrontation that the most profound and transformative discoveries are truly made.